Looks like we're live. Well, hello, everyone out there. Thank you all for tuning in today. There has been an awful lot of talk lately about just what Democrats are supposed to be doing to prepare for future elections. So, to help me understand this, I have invited Ian Silverii to chat today. Ian, for those of you who don't know him, he is the founder of the Bighorn Company, a political and communications firm that's based here in Colorado. Over the course of nearly 20 years in Colorado politics, Ian has served as a staffer to the Colorado House of Representatives, which included 2 years as chief of staff to the Speaker of the House. He is the former director of Progress Now Colorado. He's also taught courses in public policy here at the University of Denver and occasionally in my own class. He's also the co-host of an excellent Colorado politics podcast called Get More Smarter, which if you don't listen to, you really should. I will post a link to that. Ian, thank you so much for joining me today.
Seth, it's great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So I'm going to throw a couple of questions at you here. I want to start off talking about the elections that happened 2 weeks ago. Democrats, as we'll all recall, had a very strong showing in a number of off-year elections at different spots throughout the country, including New Jersey, Virginia, California, even a few local elections here in the Denver area. This all comes at a time when Democrats are struggling with thinking about how to be competitive in the future, what they should be learning from 2024 and so forth. Do you think there are lessons Democrats should be generally learning from the 2025 election cycle?
As this is I guess no longer like a hot take because I think it was like right after the election, but I still maintain that it's like let let Democrats be Democrats, let your candidates be themselves. Like there is no perfect formula, there is no perfect centrist type like model you can build in a laboratory and deploy to any congressional district in the country and automatically win. Similarly, there is no ultra progressive DSA leftist type character that you can run in any congressional district or any city or any governorship in the country and win. Why Democrats were so successful this November in 2025's elections, I think, boiled down to two major things. One, enormous, huge backlash and buyer's remorse to Donald Trump and Republicans. And two, that Democrats ran candidates that matched their electorates nearly everywhere they were successful. And in so many places. I mean, you did list off a number, but like the Mississippi State Senate also broke their supermajority because Democrats did well in enough legislative races to crack the supermajority in the upper chamber in that state. Afton Bain is heading toward a runoff in a Tennessee congressional special election. And just this week, we learned the NRCC, the National Republican Congressional Committee, is pouring a ton of money into an R+20 district.
Wow.
I firmly believe this is not because we're running Abigail Spanberger in every district or Mikey Sherrill in every district or Zoran Mamdani in every district. It's because we're running Zoran Mamdani in New York City and Abigail Spanberger in Virginia and Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey and so on and so forth. So I used to do candidate recruitment for the Colorado Democratic Party, and we had a microcosm of this in our theory of the case back when Colorado was a red state turning purple and a purple state turning blue. Find the person who matches your district and help them tell their story, and then you're already ahead out the gate. And that's what Democrats seem to have done really well this year, rather than letting one side or the other sort of win the civil war that appears to be going on under the surface here.
Well, let me ask you a question about that Civil War. We dwelled a little bit a couple of weeks ago on the memo by this group, Welcome Pack. At least I dwelled on it, and I made my students dwell on it. But like there have been others in that ilk, that these are groups sort of within the Democratic orbit, making recommendations to the Democratic Party about what the answer to future successes looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And this particular one really was kind of hitting a lot on some version of moderation, kind of a refocusing. They wanted to see a focus on economic issues and a real downplaying of identity. Does this generally, I mean, obviously you said you should run someone that matches your district, right? But does this kind of advice sound right to you? I'm particularly interested in your take on the sort of play up economic insecurity, play down identity issues. Is this something you think the party should be learning?
I think it just depends where. I think there are plenty of districts and cities and congressional districts and races where there's enough of a Democratic performance buffer or enough of a progressive base in the electorate that going into the identity issues makes a lot of sense. You look at the Seattle mayor's race, for instance, I think that was like sort of fought along those lines more
Hmm.
so than sort of your traditional centrist economic affordability, prosperity lines, right? You could look at the mayor's race in Minneapolis. That was similar, but did not go to the more progressive of the two candidates, depending on, I don't even know if these terms are useful anymore, more progressive, less progressive, leftist,
Yeah.
centrist, whatever. But I think for the purposes of this conversation, we'll like try to. I'm a big fan of Welcome Pack and what they try to do. But again, I don't think we should be broadly applying lessons to everyone everywhere. They support Marie Gluesenkamp Perez in Washington state because she wins a Trump district handily, a Trump double digit district handily. They support Jared Golden in Maine because he wins a Trump district. I think it's almost plus 20 up there handily, right? So when you're trying to, I think the win above replacement sort of math that I'm
Right.
not smart enough to talk about comes into play here. But I think like when you are talking about swing congressional districts, the theory that there's this sleeping giant of far left or ultra progressive or sleepy voters who would only show up to vote for somebody who is waving their particular banner, that has yet to materialize in any kind of real pattern or any kind of real demonstrable way throughout the electorate, right? What has been, I think, something you can hang your hat on is that the more moderate a candidate is in a close district, the more likely they are to succeed. And again, moderate might not even be the more useful term here. It might be the
Right.
more economically focused or the more affordability focused. And I think looking at New Jersey and Virginia are pretty indicative. I don't have the exact numbers at my fingertips here, but Mikey Sherrill wins the New Jersey governor's race by a double digit blowout, whereas Kamala only won it by close to 6%.
Right.
Abigail Spanberger wins Virginia in a double digit blowout when Kamala only won it by about 6%. So, like, these are two different states. I'm from New Jersey. I grew up there. Christine Todd Whitman was the Republican governor when I was growing up, and then Chris Christie was the Republican governor when I was leaving the state. And we had John Corzine in the middle, who, like, let's face it, not a stellar example of what Democratic politicians ought to be like. But all that taken together, I think at the end of the day, you don't want to overlearn any one particular lesson. You don't want to take New York City's election results and try and apply them to a congressional district in Iowa, just as much as you don't want to take Abigail Spanberger's results and try and apply them to a congressional district in Portland, Oregon, right?
Right. I'm actually, I want to just on something you said there. Like, I'm really kind of interested in this win above replacement idea. And I know they and others spend a lot of time like just trying to dissect that. And I'm actually really curious, like when you focus on someone like, say, Sherrod Brown in Ohio or like Joe Manchin in West Virginia, is like somehow like these are the last Democrats that could win these states that have gone increasingly conservative. And is the idea that you can actually create such people in a lab, or that you just have to find them and we don't know exactly why they connect, they just somehow still connect?
Yeah, I think like there's a people talk about this without using this phrase, but I use it as a pejorative, which is like people try to manufacture authenticity all the time.
Ah,
And I think that's about the dumbest thing you can do, especially when there's 700,000 actual human beings in a congressional district. And if you look hard enough, you'll probably just find one that fits the district pretty well. Like Colorado is a great example where you have like my wife, Brittany Pedersen, who's like a very sort of center left, like, Democrat who has been in the state house and Senate for a long time, wins a very center left district that stretches from, where she grew up to the mountains. You have Jason Crow out in Aurora, where there's a lot of military families, and he is a military veteran, right? You have Joe Neguse up in Boulder, who's very progressive and a CU grad, representing the University of Colorado all the way out to the ski towns in Fort Collins and CSU. We can talk about Lauren Boebert a different time, but like the point is all of these candidates match their districts. Neither one is particularly further to the left or further to the middle or whatever than the other ones, but they're the types of people that rise to the top. Joe won an open seat when Mark Udall ran for U.S. Senate. Jason defeated a Republican incumbent, Mike Kaufman, before the district was redrawn. And Brittany won an open seat in 2022 when Ed Perlmutter retired from a district that was similar but pretty differently drawn. So
mhm.
candidate recruitment is really, really important. And I think what you have in these Trump cycles is you have a lot of people raising their hands right afterwards saying, it's me. I'm the special person who can come in here and do the thing. And this is why primaries exist. And quite frankly, this is why primaries can be pretty good. Because especially in open seats, I have complicated relationships about them with incumbents that have only a little bit to do with the fact that my wife is an incumbent member of Congress. But I think if you're in an open seat and you have a super progressive candidate who's got like a DSA or Working Families Party endorsement or something, and you have a more moderate centrist candidate that has like a Chamber of Commerce background or some kind of, welcome pack designation. I don't know if they do. I think they do endorsements. They do. And they have a welcome pack endorsement. Like, great. Let's find out. Let's fight it out. Right. Neither one of these things, people don't want the Democratic Party to put their thumb really hard on the scale. And I don't think they want it for the ultra progressive candidate. And I don't think they want it for the ultra centrist or whatever candidate. I think we should have ideas and we should have battles about ideas and we should put people on the field and we should see how these election results roll out. And then we should go into general election. I mean, people ask questions about, resource scarcity and this sort of thing. Look at the Maine US Senate primary with Graham Plattner and Governor Janet Mills right now is a pretty good example of what's going on. And I mean, each candidate certainly has their bona fides. And I think, quite frankly, each candidate has some pretty serious flaws. So if you're the DSCC or a big national committee and you think this is an existential threat to the majority, you're probably going to weigh in and try and get nominated the person who you think has the better chance to win the general election, not out of some ideological fidelity to what their position may or may not be. Oh, she's a good neoliberal governor. Let's do that. No, it's more like, can she beat Susan Collins in the general and working backwards from there, right? Or can Graham Plattner,
Right.
which one of these people have a better chance of winning the election? When I was a caucus director for the state Democratic Party in Colorado for the state house, what we used to do is if there were no fatal flaws between the candidates, if there was a primary in one of our targeted districts, something that would make or break the majority in the state house, we would let them duke it out unless one of them had like a fatal flaw in the opposition researcher in their background. In that case, we would put our thumb on the scale and say, like, we want this person to win the primary. Or if it was an incumbent being challenged, it was our job as a party to protect that incumbent from a challenge because we need them for the math in the state house, which the majority in Colorado is 33 seats.
Hmm. So you touched on a subject that I really wanted to get into a little bit. This idea of authenticity. And this is a
Sure.
bugaboo for me. I know when I've had you in my class and you've talked to my students about the importance of this authenticity, that this can often be more important than issue stances or many other things about a candidate. And I'm hoping you can just expand on it. Like, can you define it? Can you give us a sense of just what it is?
I'll try not to take such a circuitous route to answer the question, but
Okay.
because I think it's a specific kind of authenticity that I think voters have a radar detector for nowadays. And it's very weird because it seems to me that Donald Trump kind of broke everything. And in 2016, people like me who trained and coached and taught candidates how to speak to voters and constituents for a really long time, all of a sudden had to update all of our models because what used to work, which was you give them the most tightly controlled script, a set of talking points, or even what we call a narrative. So, like, not say these exact words in this exact order, but like key in on these particular values, and you will be successful in translating your ideas to somebody in your district, right? Um, we were pretty insistent that they tightly controlled that messaging. In fact, we had little phrases like, don't send an email that you don't want to appear on the front page of the Denver Post. And we like meant that
Right.
because sometimes your emails would appear on the front page of the Denver Post if you were not careful. Um, Everything broke and flipped and switched around in 2016, and folks were kind of just scrambling to get back on target here. But it seems like voters just want a real person who doesn't sound like they're bullshitting them. And I think like even better word than like authenticity is like voters have a highly attuned bullshit detector right now. And
Mm-hmm.
if you are bullshitting them, they will tune you out. The second they feel like you're giving them a line or you're giving them talking points, they're going to say, you know what? No, thanks. I'm out. If we're going to have an authentic, real conversation where I'm going to tell you what I care about and what I'm worried about, and you're going to hear me out and provide either policy solutions or at least an empathetic shoulder, I'm down for that conversation. But if you're going to try and bullshit me with a bunch of talking points that were like created in a laboratory by consultants that never set foot in the state or this district, people are going to figure that out. And their ears seem to be tuned into an extra sensitive place on that right now. So the advice that I used to give candidates, be tightly controlled, be brief, keep it to 20 seconds, 76 words is like a common sort of like trope in political consulting. Throw all that out the window. Go do the long form podcast, drop the F-bomb, be yourself, talk about your kids, like get caught with mustard on your shirt. None of these things matter anymore because what people want is not some tightly scripted, highly manicured politician. They want a real ass person who's going to go fight for them. And the realer you are, the more they'll believe that you're actually going to go fight for them. Does that make sense?
I think so, but I mean, I definitely hear candidates swearing more now. And like, and people, sitting senators swearing more, and I don't know if that's if they're just responding to, the things that Trump says, or if they feel like this is a way to connect now that probably wasn't really available to us beforehand.
I think some of them are like intentionally dropping the F bomb to appear more authentic. And again, that's that manufacturing of
Right.
authenticity thing that does not work. Unless you're like a very good actor, which most politicians are not. So I think setting that aside, I think people just want to know they're having a real authentic connection with somebody. It's like the same thing with like a parasocial relationship you have with a podcaster or whatever. Like you drop the act, like the wall comes down a little bit and you're having a real conversation with a real person like this one you and I are having right now, where like I'm just kind of going off the top of my head and you're just kind of following up. This is what people are experience their media a lot more. Think about what it used to be like when it was everyone just did the Sunday shows and everything was tightly scripted and talking pointed, and you would like prep for 3 days with your comm staff for your Face the Nation interview or your Meet the Press interview or whatever it was. And you would sit across from Tim Russert or whoever, and you would like, he'd ask you the hardest question he can think of. You would give him a talking point, and you go back and forth like that for 20 minutes. That'd be it. People do not want that. I don't know if it was Trump or reality TV or the means of production of content going absolutely everywhere. I think it was all of these things, plus
Hmm.
algorithms, plus social media, plus the fact that every like Instagram reel is some kind of behind the scenes look at things now. People just don't want the show. They want what's behind the scenes at the show. You know what I mean?
I could get that, yeah. And I mean, and as you say, like even just the medium, where like you may have had 30 seconds in an ad to get a point across, and now it's more like seven. And if you only have 7 seconds, just say fuck. That will work pretty well. I mean,
Exactly.
people will remember something.
Right. If you're like a
Yeah.
politician and you have like a Donald Trump Truth Social post that's like 300 lines long or whatever, and all you do is retweet it and say, fuck this shit. Like you're probably going to like hit the engagement buttons like on whatever social media site you're on, right?
So I think this helps me. Like one of the things I don't want to make this all about Trump, obviously, but like I always sort of wonder, why is he always perceived to be the authentic candidate when we all know he's an actor putting on a show? Like, and like in the same way that sort of Ronald Reagan was at the same time. Um, I wonder, one version of authenticity I've had in my head for years is that basically an authentic candidate is a white candidate who says politically incorrect stuff. Um,
Yeah, no,
and
so
that's a
fair.
version of it, but I
No.
don't think that's exactly what you're talking about.
No, Trump in particular, and again, like I do not like the man. I do not want to spend any or as much time as possible talking about him. But I do think that there's two things going on here. One, there's the wink and the nudge that he does with everything he says, which is like,
Mm.
I am absolutely running a fucking game on you. Like
Yeah.
this is a scam. I'm getting rich. You're losing. I'm the winner. You're the loser, and the transfer is going one way. There's
And that
also
it's always been a scam. Everyone
that's
in
right.
here is a scam artist, and I'm just doing it. I'm the one
That's
doing it now. Right.
That's the second thing. And it's not just I'm the one doing it now, it's that I'm the one who's not bullshitting you about it. Yes,
Hmm.
I'm a bullshitter. Yes, I'm a liar, but so are all the rest of these people. They're pretending like they're not this way. I'm honest about it. I got the gold toilet. I got the marble in the bathroom. I'm putting the ballroom on the East Wing. I'm doing it all in plain sight, right? I'm not hiding any of it. These guys are lying to you because they're hiding the ball. I put the ball right in front of you and then I put it in my pocket. And I think that weird amount of honesty about dishonesty has cracked up the entire thing because let's like the guy commits dozens of crimes every single day in plain view of God, the universe, and everyone. He's held accountable to none of it. Steve Bannon called it flooding the zone. There are too many targets to shoot at, so nobody can particularly focus on one. I also think that like the reason why Nixon created a scandal is because the racial slurs were on a hidden tape. Donald Trump just says them into a
Right.
microphone. So it's like it removes all the veneer of like he's trying to hide something. And I guess the norms of the institutions that held it all together required people being sneaky as part of accountability.
Okay, that's okay. This is helpful, and I'm actually just jumping off what you said there. Like when he does stuff in front of everyone, and his approval ratings basically stay the same, which is not particularly high, but also just they don't move.
Right.
I mean, should we be learning more generally from this? I mean, does this tell us that maybe the things we generally think voters actually care about might not matter all that much in politics, or is it that just that Trump is a one-off? and the normal rules we think about scandals actually still matter for everyone else except him.
It's really hard to tell. I
Yeah.
think you're seeing more people get away with more shit in general, though. Right? Like, Graham Plattner had a Nazi tattoo. That is not really up for debate. Whether or not he knew it was at the time or whatever, fine. But, like, a Nazi tattoo would disqualify virtually any candidate for virtually any office from virtually any party. I have been fighting with my lefty friends about this for the last several months. It's like, if this was on the chest of a Republican, you would never shut the fuck up about it. But
Yeah.
because it's on the chest of someone who you like otherwise, you're going to find ways to excuse it and literally cover it up in his case. He gets like a Ragnarok
Yeah.
tattoo over it, which I'm not positive solves the problem, but
No.
that is neither here nor there. So I think more people are getting away with more shit because Trump has just like lowered all the standards across the board. But I do think that he is a uniquely like slippery character. And I mean, this Epstein files thing, I think, is sort of the latest example of like, oh, well, let's see old Donnie wiggle his way out of this one. And like, yeah, he might fucking do it. Like, it appears to be happening, whether that's because he sends it to the Southern District of New York to investigate a bunch of Democrats and therefore it creates another pathway for the legal work where it can't be released in the old fashioned way. But it was still my understanding that even if this bill passed the House after the discharge petition, the Senate still had to pass it. And then it would end up on his desk for a signature or a veto.
Right.
So this was all a little bit of a show to begin with, wasn't it? And like, that's good. Politics should be a show sometimes. And he knows how to make the show interesting and engaging and entertaining, which I think is why he wins more than he should, both elections and sort of like policy debates. But I think all the things you said are true. I think we're in a weird moment where standards have slipped considerably, probably because this guy has just Kool-Aid manned the wall through them. And then also, like, he is a uniquely, like, Teflon-esque character where it's just, he's got a base of support that is totally impervious to erosion. It is 35% or something of the electorate, but it is bedrock. And I mean, maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene running in the other direction will have an effect on this in the long term. Maybe it won't. She might just get excommunicated from MAGA like Reince Priebus and,
Mhm.
Matt Gaetz and all the, trail of bones before her.
Um, Okay, thanks for that. I'm going to pivot away from Trump now. I
Good.
actually have a question, a more state-specific question from a longtime subscriber, Laura Bellin,
Mm.
in Iowa. She writes that over the past 20 years, Colorado has become steadily more Democratic, while Iowa has become solidly red. Um, she wants to know, are demographics destiny? That is, Colorado has a much higher share of adults with a college degree than Iowa does, or are there things that Iowa Democrats could learn from what's been done in Colorado?
I think all of the above are true. So I think like demographics aren't destiny, but they certainly help. Um, I'm like that skeleton in the chair at the bottom of the pool in the meme, waiting for Texas to turn blue because the Latino vote was just supposed to automatically carry that over at some point. It's gone the other way. So I don't actually believe that because like that's also to say that like demographics are this immutable feature that continue to be relevant in the same way through time, and I'm not sure that's true either, right? Like in 2016 when like the polling error was like 3 points or whatever in the wrong direction, a lot of the smarter pollsters I talked to said like once they weighted everything to educational attainment levels, it all kind of snapped into place, right? So what we learned about the American electorate is that the more higher education you attain, the less likely you are to be a Trump supporter or a MAGA voter. But that's not definitive. That's just like a model. That's like a decile likelihood, right? But like to her exact question, I mean, like Massachusetts and Colorado and Vermont are the top three states for educational attainment, right? In terms of like people in the state that have higher degrees, right? But like if you go down the line, like New Hampshire is number 8. New Hampshire has an entirely Republican state government, right? And they have an entirely Democratic congressional delegation. Virginia is number 10. It's a swing state, right? Like, I think like New York is number 11. Utah is number 12. Utah has 0 Democrats in statewide office and 0 Democrats on the federal delegation. They will have 1 Democrat after this, court mandated redraw they're doing right now. North Dakota is number 15 in educational attainment. So I'm not sure you can say for sure that having a higher degree or a higher ranking in educational attainment automatically makes you a blue state. I just gave 3 counterexamples to that just on the
Mhm.
top 15 of the list. But I do think that like it doesn't not matter. And if you look at the whole thing in totality, like the lower educational attainment states are redder, the higher educational attainment states are bluer. But the swing states kind of find themselves all over that ranking map. What I think matters more than anything is having what I call good, like progressive infrastructure, so organizations on the ground that do not just pop up and exist during election cycles and then disappear again for the next 2 years. You have these constant nonprofit organizations or PACs or community organizing entities or candidates or whatever they are who always are doing work in the community, on cycle, off cycle, year round work. That matters a lot. The Koch brothers innovated on this with this thing called the Libre Initiative, where they went into Latino and Hispanic communities over the last 20 years and just put up like literally like community service, like nonprofits. It's like, let me help you gain access to benefits. Let me help you do your taxes. Let's help your kids study for the GED or the college entrance exam or whatever. And then like when September rolls around, they start handing them political leaflets about how they should be voting for conservatives because of school choice or, whatever issue there is. Democrats have a bad habit of not investing in states over the long term, and an even worse habit of investing really heavily in the last like 2 months of an election and then pulling up stakes and running away if it doesn't work. Like looking at Alaska as a good example of having done the latter and now having done the former, where you have a lot of organizations who are year round on the ground in Alaska. Shout out to the 907 initiative in particular, who are just always holding politicians' feet to the fire no matter what time of year it is. They took out the mayor of Anchorage. They're working on U.S. Senator Dan Sullivan. Like these are people who are getting the job done up there. But just a few years ago, I think in 2020, Al Gross had a U.S. Senate race that all of a sudden became rather interesting against Lisa Murkowski. The party ran in there and threw a bunch of money at the wall. Didn't work, and they pulled up stakes and ran away. But a lot of people stayed and started investing in building movement organizations so that when the bad candidate on the other side comes along, or when the scandal comes along, or when the good recruit on your side comes along, you're not building it. You're not building a plane while you're flying it. You already have the tarmac laid and the air traffic control tower up, and you're ready to go, right? So
Mm.
I think all these things need to happen at the same time. And what I hope Democrats and progressive donors and organizations are looking at is not just the seven, U.S. Senate races or the seven presidential swing states, but investing heavily in all states all over the country, no matter what. We used to have U.S. Senate seats in North Dakota and Iowa, man, and Ohio. And like once we lost those, all the infrastructure got pulled away. Florida, what a tragic example of a state that was competitive for decades. And now Democrats don't even seem to really try that hard unless it's like a statewide ballot initiative on an issue?
Yeah. Wow. Good rundown.
Thanks.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So, just to have a question, I guess specifically on Colorado, where you are based and where we are based. I'm just curious, like going into 2026, are there particular elections that you think Colorado should be focused on, or things that you're paying attention to? I know you have some clients, some dogs in these
Right,
particular
right.
fights, but like, are there particularly interesting primaries you think we should be looking at?
So shout out and disclosure. I'm working for this guy who's Phil Weiser. He's the Attorney General of the state of Colorado. He's running for governor against the other guy in that picture, who's a U.S. Senator named Michael Bennett. They're both.
Shout out to the print edition of the Denver Post too. That was
I
kind of
I
awesome.
love
Yeah.
I love me a physical newspaper. I used to write for the Denver Post, so I still have a nostalgia about getting a paper and reading it on Sunday, even though now I have two kids and that is harder every single week. But the gubernatorial primary is really important, and I think like just to push your point one step further, the primaries are now the generals in Colorado. Colorado Republicans have not fielded a viable statewide candidate since 2020, when then U.S. Senator Cory Gardner was up for re-election. He had barely won a very close race in a terrible year in 2014 in Colorado. He won by 1.8% against incumbent U.S. Senator at the time, Mark Udall. And he had 1 6-year term. And then John Hickenlooper, who defeated him in 2020 by 10 points, is now running for
Mm.
re-election and is very likely to be facing his own primary, ostensibly from the sort of more progressive wing, according to some reporting the Colorado Sun did over the weekend. So the gubernatorial primary is going to be really, really interesting. The headline there was heavyweight bout, and I think that's the right way to think about it, because Phil Weiser and Michael Bennett are both won statewide races. Bennett since 2010, Weiser since 2018, against talented, formidable Republican challengers when such things existed in Colorado, which
Mhm.
appears to no longer be the case. So all four of our constitutional offices are up. The Attorney General's primary is really, really interesting. You have four candidates in that race right now, and I don't need to do their names unless you want me to, which I can. But that one's going to be really interesting to replace Phil's job. The Secretary of State race is a race between a current county clerk and a current state senator. That's going to be pretty interesting. And the state treasurer's race, even though like the actual office itself is hard to get people excited about, you have two really interesting candidates. You have Brianna Titone, who's the state's first openly transgender lawmaker running for that office, being turned out of the state house, and a state senator named Jeff Bridges, who's on what we call the Powerful Joint Budget Committee. And none of those races, except for maybe the AG's race, is sort of this Civil War framing of like the far left DSA whatever versus the center establishment. They all kind of find themselves at varying parts of those quadrants, and that's what's going to make them interesting. But then you have the really banner fight besides the governor's race that will be both a banner primary and a banner general is in one congressional district. That's the 8th congressional district in the northern Denver suburbs that's currently occupied by a guy named Gabe Evans, who won a very close race against Dr. Yadira Caraveo. So the district got drawn in 2021 because we gained a congressional district because of our increase in population. So after what normally used to be a decennial redistricting that everybody did, now we're just doing them whenever we want to. Colorado added the 8th district, and we have an independent redistricting commission. This was their first job, and they basically drew 7 safe seats and 1 swing seat. This is the swing seat, is CD8. And you have a number of Democratic lawmakers and one outsider guy all running for the primary in that race against Gabe Evans, who I do not believe has either a legitimate or even any primary from his side. That's the race that everyone's watching right now because it really is the only one that stands a chance of going to the Republican. And in most scenarios, Yadira won it by about 1,400 votes in 2022. Gabe won it by about 1,400 votes in 2024. Whoever wins it this time might win by a little bit more because the environment is moving more decisively in the Democratic column. And there were some some municipal elections under the surface in that neck of the woods that went pretty well for Democrats in this last November 2025 election. So we're feeling good about it, but none of us are going to sleep until Gabe Evans is, out of office.
Yeah. Yeah, and that sounds like a district that really could just flip back and forth for quite a while.
It might, yeah. The thing that I talk to, so my rule is like when I'm not working on a campaign, anybody is free to call me and ask for my advice. And if their opponents call me, I'll give them my advice too. It's really who can keep it for 2 cycles more than who can win it this one.
Right.
So that's the question I'm asking these campaigns is like, how can you demonstrate to those of us who care a lot about this that you're not just going to win in the Trump backlash year, but you're going to be able to hold it in whatever happens in 2028.
Wow. Okay. That's a really good rundown. So I want to give you back your time, but if is there any question you have or any comment you wanted to make before we sign off?
I'm just grateful to be a part of this. I've been a huge fan of yours since before I knew you. I'm grateful that I get to talk to your students sometimes and that I got to teach at DU for a little while before my schedule became kind of untenable. But just shout out to the Tusk community. What is it? Tusk World?
The Tuskiverse.
Yeah, Tuskiverse, the Tuskiverse. And I'm a big fan. I guess I'll plug Get More Smarter podcast where Seth comes on and discusses even year election results. So we'll have him on after the primary in June of 2026. So you can watch our crossover there. And anybody who wants to reach out, Ian at getmoresmarter.com or Ian at thebighorncompany.com. Both go to the same place. And thanks so much for having me, man. This was really fun. I appreciate it.
Oh, really appreciate all that. And I'll just put in a little plug for you. There are not many people in this world who can lecture on campaign finance and make it interesting. Ian is one of a very small group of people who's capable of doing that. I am not in that club. So, thank you for your wonderful, wonderful contributions to education here.
Absolutely. And thanks so much to everybody who tuned in. This was really fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. Our biggest audience yet so far. So, all right.
I'll tell Kyle Clark he has a new high watermark.
Stomped on Kyle Clark. Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.